Cold millionaire seeker claimed he was infertile, until 5 genius kids crashed his press event screaming, "Dad!" Some men say they can't love. Others say they can't have children. He said both, until 5 little strangers walked into a press conference, holding DNA reports, and called him Dad. He built his fortune on silence. But the truth? It had dimples, messy hair, and a voice that wouldn't stop shouting, "You forgot us." And in that moment, the man who swore he'd never need a family realized he'd left the only one that ever mattered, the ring that disappeared. Laya Monroe opened the velvet box like it might still hold a promise. But the ring was gone. It had vanished the way he had. Without a warning, without a note. Just silence. 6 years ago, she would have sworn Ethan Whitaker was the love of her life. He wasn't warm, he wasn't easy, but there was something behind his coldness that made her stay. A wound she thought she could heal, a silence she thought she'd fill. He kissed her like a secret and held her like a man who didn't know how. But when he whispered, "Someday, I'll make this right," she believed him. Then, on the day he promised to meet her family, he didn't show. Her father, Richard Monroe, slammed down his glass of bourbon and called it what it was. A ghost, a fraud, a lie. And Lila, all 23 years of her, still clutching her phone with shaking hands, tried to defend a man who never answered. "I'm sure he's just delayed," she said, the words catching in her throat like glass. "You're not a child anymore, Lila," her mother added quietly. "Don't make excuses for a man who's already made his choice." They didn't say it outright. They didn't have to. A week later, the test came back positive. Not 1 heartbeat. Not 2. 5. "Congratulations," the OB said, blinking at the screen. "You're having quintuplets." The silence that followed in her parents' kitchen felt colder than the snow falling outside. "We gave you everything," her father said, not raising his voice, which somehow made it worse. "And this is how you thank us?" "I didn't do this to shame you," her voice cracked. "I was in love. I still..." He stood, and she flinched before she meant to. "Get out." "Nat, please. You want to play house? Fine, do it somewhere else." Her mother cried into a napkin, but she didn't stop him. She didn't follow when Lila packed a duffel bag in the dark. The bus ride to Savannah was quiet and cold. No one talked, no one asked, and she didn't tell. Her belly grew fast. The days crawled. She worked odd jobs, scraped together a life in a town where no one knew her last name. But every night she pressed her palm to her stomach and whispered, "I don't need him to love me, but I swear to God, he's going to know you exist." The babies were born in late spring, 5 boys, wild and wondrous. The doctor said she shouldn't have made it through. But she did. Milo, Jonah, Theo, Jamie and Lynn. Each came into the world howling. Furious, demanding, brilliant. By the time they were 6, they were fixing toasters, building drone kits, decoding crossword puzzles in pen. She didn't have time for regret. Just milk, math homework, and questions she couldn't answer. "Who's our dad?" Milo asked one night. She pretended to be asleep. But he already knew. He always knew. And then came the press conference. Live-streamed, headline broke. Ethan Whitaker, CEO of Whitaker Global, stood behind a podium in a designer suit, his voice cold and clipped. "As some of you know, due to a medical condition, I've been unable to have children. I will not be answering questions about marriage or heirs. This company will not be run by emotion." Milo froze on the couch. Lila didn't look up from the sink. Is that him?" She wiped her hands slowly, the water still running. She looked. Once. Her breath left her like a punch. We whispered, "That's him?" And Milo, quiet, watchful, too smart for his own good, tilted his head and said, "Then it's time we go introduce ourselves." Chapter 1. The Lie He Told the World. You could feel the tension before he even walked out. The press room at Whitaker Global's Manhattan headquarters was packed. Journalists crammed shoulder to shoulder, whispers bouncing like marbles off glass walls. Every camera was trained on the sleek black podium framed by the Whitaker family crest, an ivory hawk with a laurel in its beak. And when Ethan Whitaker finally stepped forward, tall, immaculately dressed, shoulders squared like a fort, the room fell into a silence so sharp it hummed. They said he had no weaknesses, no scandals, no family, just a mind like a scalpel and a mouth that rarely missed its mark. He adjusted the mic, gaze sweeping the crowd like it was beneath him. The first question was soft, a softball. "Mr. Whitaker, do you plan to take a family role within the company, as your father once did?" Pause, measured. "I have no children," he said, voice steady, "and no plans to marry. As for legacy, this company is my legacy." The press nodded. Next. A reporter near the back, young and brave, raised her hand. "A rumor circulating about your medical status. Infertility. Is it true?" A flicker, just a flicker of something behind his eyes. He smiled, but it didn't reach past his cheekbones. "I have a condition that prevents biological children. It's not relevant to the performance of Whitaker Global, and it's not a topic I will entertain again." The silence that followed wasn't respect. It was disbelief, carefully masked in decorum. Ethan looked down at his notes. Next topic, tech acquisitions. But he never got to it, because just then, 5 children pushed through the side doors. Security didn't stop them. They weren't expecting a breach from 5 small bodies in corduroy pants and sneakers lit up with tiny red LEDs. And the oldest one, Milo, stepped right into the spotlight. His voice was clear, unshaking, and devastating. "Pot you, Dad." Gasps cracked through the room like glass under boots. Ethan blinked. Once, twice. He didn't move. "This is Milo," the boy said, waving a folded paper. "I'm 10. These are my brothers. Theo, Jonah, Jamie, and Lynn. We're yours." A reporter's pen slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft click. "Excuse me," Ethan began, but Milo wasn't finished. "We brought proof," he said, lifting the paper. "DNA test. You match all 5 of us. 99.9%. Another child, Jamie held up a laminated folder. The logo of a private genetics lab shimmered under the lights. Security stirred. The board shifted in their seats. Ethan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. One of the younger boys piped up. "You said you couldn't have kids, so why are we here?" It wasn't sarcasm, it was heartbreak, plain and raw. Ethan stared at them like they were ghosts, like they'd crawled out of a past he'd buried in the dark. "Security," he finally said, his voice thin. "Get them out." But no one moved. Because in that room, full of power suits and television cameras, the only truth that mattered was standing 4 feet tall and asking to be loved. Milo took 1 step closer. His chin didn't tremble. "We're not going anywhere," he said, "until you tell the truth." From the back of the room, a man whispered into his phone. Within 3 hours, the footage had gone viral. And within 6, the internet had already chosen sides. Hot You Dad was trending in 6 countries. Infertile CEO has 5 kids? Is Ethan Whitaker a liar or a father in denial? And somewhere, in a small rented house in Savannah, Georgia, Laya Monroe turned off the screen, her heart beating like a broken metronome. They'd done it. The boys had done it. Now came the storm. Chapter 2. 5 kids, 1 word, Dad. For a moment, no one moved. Ethan Whitaker, the man known for making multi-billion-dollar decisions in seconds, stood frozen, his polished composure cracking frame by frame. Milo took another step forward, his brothers close behind. They formed a line, wobbly but united, like chess pieces, daring the king to move. "Who let these children in?" a board member hissed from the side, but nobody answered. Because the truth was there, standing in the middle of the room, eyes locked on the one man who had built an empire by pretending they didn't exist. A small boy with glasses, Jonah, pulled out a second paper and handed it to the nearest camera. "We ran the test 3 times, he said proudly, "from different labs, all match." Theo, the second tallest, cleared his throat and added, "We didn't want to ruin your workday, but lying's worse than being interrupted, right?" Gasps, laughter, murmurs, and silence. Ethan's voice was low, cold. "I don't know these children." "You don't remember us?" Jamie asked, eyes wide. "Not even me? I was your favorite, I think. You always picked me up first." "I've never met you before," Ethan said, jaw tight. "This is some elaborate—" "You remember Lila?" Milo cut in. And just like that, her name cracked the room open. Ethan flinched. The journalist knew that name. So did the board. Laya Monroe, the girl who disappeared 6 years ago, right after rumors swirled of an engagement that never happened. And now, apparently, the mother of his 5 sons. "I don't see how this is anyone's business," Ethan snapped. "This is a corporate forum. Remove them." Still, no one moved. Milo didn't blink. "We just wanted to know why you lied." Jonah sniffled and nudged his brother's elbow. "Is it because we weren't enough?" That question didn't come from power or proof. It came from the soft, shattered place inside a child. Even the security guards hesitated. In the back, someone said quietly, "This isn't a scandal, it's a tragedy." Later that night, cable news anchor voices over. Ethan Whitaker, CEO of Whitaker Global, faced public scrutiny today after 5 children stormed a press conference claiming to be his biological sons. The incident went viral, sparking debate nationwide. Whitaker has not issued a formal statement. "Would you be willing to wear Mako's clothing?" Olivia asked, noting the... Ethan paced his office, the city flickering behind him like a field of fireflies he couldn't catch. "Why did this happen?" he growled into the phone. On the other end, his fixer said, "We're investigating the breach, but it looks like the kids had authentic documents. At least one is confirmed from Whitaker Diagnostics." "Ione Lab?" Ethan's voice cracked. "Sir, there's a chain of custody. Anonymous donor listed 6 years ago." 6 years. The same year everything changed. The year his memory blurred like fog across a windshield. The year he stopped hearing Lila's voice in his sleep. He ended the call and turned to the mirror. 5 kids, 1 DNA test. 1 woman who had never called him once. And yet, he couldn't stop seeing it. The curve of Milo's jaw. The way Lynn blinked when he was nervous. The silence Jamie wrapped around himself when he was unsure. Pieces of himself. Pieces he didn't know were missing. Yevon a night gave. Night. The house was dark save for the soft glow of the television screen, now playing nothing but muted news replays. Lila sat on the couch, arms wrapped around herself. "I did it," Aunt June said, coming in with a blanket. "They actually did it." Lila nodded. "They weren't supposed to go alone." "We didn't go alone," Aunt June said softly. "They went together." Lila buried her face in her hands. "I don't care what the world thinks," she whispered, "but if he denies them again—" "Won't," Aunt June said. "Not after that. Not with the whole world watching." Lila didn't answer. She knew Ethan better than anyone. And that terrified her more than not knowing him at all. New York City. Dawn. The city stirred. Screens replayed the same headline. "Hot You Dad" was still trending. Inside Whitaker Global's boardroom, the damage, share prices dipped. Investors demanded answers. Ethan stood before them all and said, "I want the full test redone, quietly, privately, and I want every piece of my medical history reviewed, because something doesn't add up." Back in Savannah, 5 boys were already packing their backpacks. "Where are you going?" Lila asked. "To get our dad," Milo said. And this time, Lila didn't stop them. She just whispered, "Tell him I didn't ask for anything, but I gave him everything." Chapter 3. The Woman Who Never Asked for Anything. Laya Monroe had learned not to expect kindness from storms. But they rolled in fast, made a mess, and left you cleaning up in silence. This one came in the shape of 5 backpacks lined against the wall, stuffed with mismatched socks, peanut butter crackers, and a blurry photo Milo had printed at the library. The photo of Ethan, of the man who, 6 years ago, had promised her forever, and vanished without a word. She stared at the boys now, lined up like soldiers in sneakers, their faces lit with the kind of fierce hope she didn't know how to protect anymore. "You shouldn't have gone," she whispered, voice trembling. "We had to," Milo said, standing straighter. "He lied about us." "We said he can't have kids," Theo added. "But here we are." "We didn't want to hurt you, Mom," Jamie mumbled, staring at his shoes. "We just wanted to know why he never came." Her heart cracked open right there. It wasn't anger that washed over her. It was grief. Slow, heavy, quiet. Like standing in the rain and realizing you don't care if you get wet anymore. "I never wanted him to be your enemy," she said softly, sitting down at the edge of the couch. "I just didn't want you to think you were a mistake." Jonah slid into her lap before she could finish. "We're not. We're Monroe, Whitaker, geniuses." She laughed, then cried. Aunt June came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Well, they sure shook New York like a snow globe." Lila looked up, mascara smudged beneath her lashes. "The phone won't stop ringing. I had to turn it off." "Good," June said. "You owe nobody your story, not the press, not even him." But that wasn't entirely true. She owed him something. Not an explanation, just the truth. 6 years ago. Ethan's voicemail came 3 days after he missed her family dinner. "Hey, I need some time." Then nothing. A week later, she drove to his Manhattan penthouse. The doorman said Ethan had checked into a private medical facility. She waited. No calls, no visits. When she finally reached someone, his assistant said Ethan had suffered neurological trauma and didn't want contact with anyone from his personal life. It didn't make sense. And when she learned she was pregnant, it didn't matter. She never told him. Not because she was cruel, but because the man she loved wasn't there anymore, and the one who replaced him had already forgotten her. Present day, Savannah, Georgia. The children were asleep, 5 curled bodies in one room, dreams rising and falling beneath blankets stitched by their... Lila sat on the porch, staring at the moonlight brushing the garden fence. Aunt June joined her with 2 mugs of tea. "You think he's going to fight it?" she asked. Lila sipped slowly. "He doesn't even remember me. Or he doesn't want to." Lila said nothing. A beat passed. "We'll come," June said. "Men like that always do, when the truth costs them less than the lie." Lila closed her eyes. "I don't want his apology. I just want my boys to know where they came from. New York City, where no one welcomed her." Ethan replayed the footage of the boys crashing his press conference again. And again. Every freeze frame showed something different. A tilt of the head, a nervous twitch, the same way he used to adjust his cufflinks. He looked at a lab result. Paternity match confirmed. His hands trembled. He picked up the phone. "Get me everything on Laya Monroe. Address, phone number, medical history. I want to know why she never came back." His voice cracked slightly at the last word. "I need to know." The next morning, Lila stood at the sink when a knock rattled the front door. Aunt June answered. The man standing there looked like a statue from a world Lila had buried. Ethan, less sharp than before, tired, paler, but still him. She didn't speak. Neither did he, until one of the boys peeped around the hallway corner and whispered, "He came." And another followed, and another, until all five stood at the edge of the living room like shadows, waiting for sunlight. Ethan looked at them, then at her, and whispered the first honest sentence he'd said in years. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lila's eyes didn't blink. "Because the man I loved forgot me, and I didn't want you to forget them too." Chapter 4. The Condition of Inheritance. In the Whitaker family, legacy was never inherited. It was claimed with blood, with ambition, and sometimes with lies. The Whitaker estate in upstate New York was quiet that morning, blanketed in thin fog and expectation. Inside the study, Ethan stood before the fireplace, the crackling logs doing little to thaw the cold that had settled in his chest. Across from him, Charles Whitaker sipped from a crystal tumbler of 18-year Glenlivet like it was coffee. He looked pleased, and that alone made Ethan uneasy. "You're slipping, nephew," Charles said, crossing one angle over the other as he settled deeper into their late patriarch's leather chair. First the infertility rumor, now 5 children showing up on live chess? That's not the Ethan I taught how to play chess. "I never told the world I couldn't have kids," Ethan said sharply. "That came from a medical file you had access to." Charles chuckled. "You know how stories grow, especially when they benefit the right people." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You planted it." Charles didn't deny it. Instead, he raised his glass. Self-preservation. Whitaker Global Boardroom, 6 years ago. The diagnosis had been handed down quietly. A fertility specialist, an envelope, a nod. Ethan never questioned it. He was too distracted, grieving his father, fighting for the company, fading in and out of headaches and memory gaps after the accident. So when someone whispered the word infertile, he swallowed it, like every other expectation he'd never asked for. Now it felt like a trap. "Let's speak plainly," Charles said, rising to pour himself another drink. "The board is nervous. You have no heirs, no wife, no clear line of succession, and with your image, now questionable, they're considering a vote." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "To remove me?" "We install someone more stable," Charles said, smiling. "Like me. Family, of course. Clean, married soon." Ethan scoffed. "That socialite you hired to smile at fundraisers?" "Sophie is perfectly suitable," Charles said, "and the prenup's airtight." Ethan stepped closer. "I won't let you take it." Charles didn't flinch. "Then give them what they want. A wife, a family, a statement that makes them forget all about the DNA circus your bastard kids kicked off." "Not bastards." "I'd claim them, marry their mother, or pick someone else quickly. Otherwise, Ethan, you'll lose the company your father built." Ethan turned to the window, his reflection splintered by the leaded glass. Outside, his grandmother stood by the garden, and he suddenly remembered what she used to say when he was a boy. "Legacy isn't what you leave behind in buildings or money. It's what looks back at you with your eyes." Garden later that day. Margaret Whitaker was 83 and sharp as broken glass. She walked with a cane carved from cherry wood and wore her late husband's wedding band on a chain around her neck. When Ethan approached, she didn't turn. "I always hoped you'd give me something other than press releases," she said, "but I suppose children crashing a press conference works too." He stood beside her, silent. "I look like you," she said after a long pause. "Especially the shy one. What's his name?" "Jin." "And the bold one?" "Milu?" She nodded. "You always needed a boy who could speak the truth when you—" Ethan's throat tightened. "I didn't know they existed." Margaret's eyes turned to his. "Do you now?" He nodded slowly. Then the rest doesn't matter, she said, resting her hand briefly on his. A name on a building means nothing compared to 5 boys who already call you dad. Whitaker now burst into a break. Olivia didn't move. The boardroom reeked of tension and disinfectant. Ethan entered, not as the accused, but as a man who had finally decided what mattered. I'd like to clarify a few things, he said, voice calm but cutting. Yes, the children are mine. 5 of them, born 6 years ago, the result of a relationship I never spoke about publicly. Gasps, raised brows, whispers. I've requested an independent audit of my medical records. I believe there has been tampering. As of now, I rescind the statement that I am infertile. Charles scoffed. Is this a confession or a ploy for sympathy? Ethan didn't even look at him. It's the truth. I have sons, and their mother, Laya Monroe, raised them without help, without money, and without ever asking for a thing. That's more than most of you in this room have ever done. And someone clapped, soft, from the back. Ethan turned to the screen behind him and pulled up a photo. The boys, all 5, building a cardboard fortress in the middle of their tiny living room. Smiling. My legacy, Ethan said, walks on 2 legs and corrects reporters with science facts. The room went quiet. And for the first time in 6 years, Ethan Whitaker smiled. Chapter 5. The DNA War begins. The envelope shook in Ethan's hand. Thick ivory cardstock, Whitaker seal embossed on the corner, and inside it, everything. Or nothing. He stood in the private office of Dr. Grace Lane, head of Whitaker Global's in-house medical team, a woman with steady hands, a deeper loyalty to science than politics, and no patience for lies. She passed him a glass of water but didn't force him to drink it. You said you needed truth, she said, not comfort. He nodded. Open it. She sliced the seal, removed the single-page report, scanned, then paused. With Ethan's voice cracked for the first time that morning. Her eyes met his. The initial report from 6 years ago, infertility due to traumatic injury, was doctored. Silence. Deliberately? Ethan asked. Elaine hesitated. The original file was overwritten. There's no trace of who authorized it. But yes, your fertility was never impaired. Ethan sank into the chair, like a man punched mid-run. It was a lie, he whispered, and I believed it. Grace nodded. Someone wanted you to think you couldn't father children. That's medical manipulation. It's also, if proven, a federal offense. He let the words wash over him. Manipulated, lied to, made sterile not by biology but by design. And in that moment, he didn't just feel wronged. He felt robbed. 6 years ago, same clinic. Laya sat on this very couch once, wearing a borrowed coat, her belly just beginning to swell beneath the fabric. Her fingers had curled around her phone like a lifeline. A checkup, she'd whispered, unsure who she was trying to convince. The nurse never asked for insurance, because the Whitaker name was already on the file. Without telling Ethan, because she believed he'd already abandoned her. And he had, without even knowing it. Present day, Ethan's penthouse. Milo sat at the edge of the marble kitchen island, legs swinging. He wasn't speaking, just watching, the way only Milo could. Ethan poured juice into a glass, too full, and it spilled slightly over the edge. Milo didn't flinch. I want to ask something, Milo said quietly. Ethan wiped the spill. Okay? Do you think Mom was trying to punish you by not telling you? Ethan paused. The question was too sharp to come from a child, but too honest not to answer. No, he said after a long silence. I think she didn't want to chase someone who was already walking away. Milo looked at him then. Really looked. You're different than I thought. My sir? Milo shrugged. You cry quieter than Mom. That knocked the air from Ethan's chest. Windows wide, Olivia waited patiently. The legal team laid out the situation like an autopsy. Your uncle's hands are all over this, the head attorney said, sliding a report across the table. Charles authorized a data purge the same week your diagnosis appeared in the system, and he personally handled your post-accident care transfer. Ethan didn't blink. Why? The room went still. We remove you as heir, one lawyer whispered. If you couldn't have children, the family line ended with you.
Ethan folded the page. Then we reopened the line, he said. Lila's house, that evening. She was folding laundry when Ethan showed up. No suit, no press, just him. Can I talk to you? He asked. Lila nodded. The porch light buzzed overhead as they sat. I went back to the clinic, he said. I know now. About the report, about the lie. He didn't speak, just folded another shirt, the small kind, Lynn's. I don't blame you, he added, for walking away. Lila looked at him then. Really looked. I didn't walk away, she said. I stood still, you just kept going. That truth didn't sting. It steadied him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a copy of the updated test results. This one, signed, sealed, official. I'm not here to make up for 6 years, he said. I'm here to start the next 6. And then he added the only sentence that mattered. If you'll let me.
Chapter 6. The Woman at the Gate. The Whitaker estate looked like something out of a royal catalog. Ivy-wrapped columns, arched glass, a sweeping staircase that had carried generations to glory or ruin. Lila had only seen it once. The night Ethan took her there and whispered that one day she'd walk through the front doors wearing his name. She hadn't thought it would be like this. Was not holding her breath at the security gate. Not gripping 5 small hands with knuckles white from fear. Ma'am, there's no name on the list for a Laya Monroe, the guard said, too polite to be cruel. We were invited, Milo said, stepping forward. We're his sons. The guard blinked. His... Another guard leaned in, whispered, checked his earpiece. Nin nodded. Then go in. But just them. Lila tightened her grip on their hands. No, we go in together. Inside the waiter's ballroom. Charles Whitaker was all smiles and silk when they entered. The guests paused mid-sip, mid-laugh, mid-step. 5 children, 1 woman, and the truth between them. Well, Charles said smoothly, descending the stairs like he belonged on a stage. If it isn't our little media storm. He eyed Lila like she was gum on his imported Italian loafer. Brave of you to show up without a proper invitation. I didn't come for you, Lila said evenly. I came for my children. Charles chuckled. Still claiming them? Even after the DNA circus? Milo stepped forward and held up his birth certificate. Your nephew's name is right here. You can't erase it just because you want to. A few guests gasped. Others pretended to sip champagne. Charles's jaw twitched. You're not a Whitaker, he muttered to Lila. She met his eyes with calm defiance. No, I'm the woman who raced what your name failed to protect. Marguerite Parlor, minutes later. Margaret Whitaker sat in her high boot chair, her pearl brooch catching the light as she looked at the boys crowding around her feet. You must be Jamie, she said, smiling softly. I nodded. Are you, she said to Theo, are the one who likes to take things apart? Theo shrugged. Only when I can put them back together. She laughed, an honest, round sound that hadn't been heard in that house in years. They're brilliant, she told Lila, eyes misted. All of them, and kind. I've never had a reason not to be, Lila whispered, until now. Margaret reached for her cane. Come with me. Main hallway moments later. As Margaret entered with Lila and the boys in tow, the ballroom dimmed, the music faded. Everyone, she said, cane tapping against the floor. Let's settle something tonight. The crowd hushed. Children are Whitakers, and the woman who raised them has done more for this family's honor than half of you sipping wine on my carpet. Charles stepped forward, face tight. You can't decide that alone. Watch me, Margaret said. I built this family's future before you learned to hold a fork. Ethan entered through the side door, jacket in hand, tie loosened. He'd heard the shouting. He walked to Lila slowly, eyes never leaving hers. I should have walked through that gate 6 years ago, he said. Instead, I waited for you to prove something I already knew in my bones. Then he turned to the boys. Milo, Jamie, Jonah, Theo. He knelt on marble in front of every watching soul. I'm your father. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to earn it. After the crowd disposition, Lila and Ethan stood alone by the back veranda, city lights flickering in the far-off hills. You didn't have to kneel, she said. Well, I did, Ethan replied. The only reason I have a future is because you carried what I forgot. She looked at him for a long time, then said, This doesn't fix everything. I know, but it's a start. He offered his hand. Then start with me. She didn't take it, not yet. Instead, she walked toward the children waiting at the fountain. But she looked back, and for the first time, Ethan felt hope wasn't something you earned. It was something you showed up for. Chapter 7, The Memory That Broke Him. It started with a smell. Lemon, cardamom, vanilla. Ethan Whitaker stood barefoot in his penthouse kitchen, staring at a teacup on the counter. It was chipped along the rim, the way Lila's favorite mug always had been. The boys had made tea earlier. Milo insisted they use the grown-up cups. He remembered watching them, silent, unsure. Now that cup sat there, steaming, and something shifted. Not in the room. In him. 6 years ago. Rain. And so much rain. He remembered a voice Lila's calling out his name. He'd turned, smiling. And then headlights. A blur. The sound of metal. Blood. Pain. And silence. When he woke in the hospital 2 days later, everything felt dreamlike. His uncle told him he'd collapsed from overwork. He'd lost time. Nothing major. They'd taken his phone. They'd taken her voice. And he forgot. Because someone wanted him to. Prepare for night. He staggered back from the counter, gripping the edge of the island like the ground had tilted beneath him. His mind flooded. Eliva's laughed. Her sleepy voice. The way she touched his shoulder when she wanted him to slow down. The way she'd whispered, "Don't disappear on me." And how, despite everything, he had. Dean's office later that night. Milo sat across from him, a Rubik's Cube twisting in his hands. Ethan hadn't said much since dinner. Until now. I remember, he whispered. Milo looked up. What? I remember her. Your mom. I remember how I felt. I didn't leave her. I wouldn't have. Milo said nothing. I didn't know who I was for a while, Ethan added. But I think I do now. I was a man who thought protecting people meant walking alone. Turns out, I just left everyone behind. Milo studied him, then placed the cube on the desk. You're not the only one who forgot, he said. Sometimes we forgot you too. Ethan's breath caught. I don't want to be forgotten anymore. You won't be, Milo said, but you've got a lot of makeup work to do. Ethan smiled, blinking fast. I'll start now. Next morning, Ethan woke brightly. To knock. Then Lila entered, cautious but calm. Called, she asked. Ethan stood beside the window, holding a small velvet box in his palm. I found this in storage, he said. It was supposed to be yours. He opened it. Inside was a simple ring, silver, small stone, worn edges. She stepped closer. I was going to propose the night of your parents' dinner, he said. Then the accident happened, and I just vanished. Lila's throat worked hard. You remembered all of it? Enough to hate the man I became. She picked up the ring, held it between two fingers. You can't erase what happened. I'm not trying to. Then why show me this now? Ethan looked at her, quiet, steady. Because I finally remember the question I never got to ask. She met his gaze, eyes steady. Then ask it, she said. But he didn't. Because he knew now wasn't the time for a ring. Now was the time for truth. Once morning, same night. Ethan stood by his grandmother's bed, watching her sleep, her breath shallow, her hands still wrapped in the soft quilt Lila had mended earlier that week. He bent down and whispered, I remember her. I remember who I used to be, and I'm not letting them go again. Margaret stirred, opened her eyes. You took long enough, she said, groggy but sharp. He smiled. Think I still have time? She nodded. Love's not a door, Ethan. It's a gate. You just have to stop standing on the wrong side of it. Chapter 8. The Custody Clause. The courtroom was too polished to feel real. Marble floors, mahogany pews, a gold-embroidered state seal above the judge's bench. But for Laya Monroe, it might as well have been a battlefield. At the center stood everything she'd fought to protect. 5 boys, wide-eyed, silent, each flanked by lawyers in tailored suits, like armor made of money. Across from her sat Charles Whitaker, smirking behind his legal team. He tapped his pen like he already knew how this would end. Ethan hadn't arrived. Not yet. Her eyes were heavily brutish. The fear in her inner boot, was almost automatic. The girl's great eyes were somehow overpowered. You don't have to do this, Lila told Ethan, standing in his foyer as their sons pretended not to listen from the hallway. He looked exhausted, like someone who'd been trying to rebuild a house while still living inside its ruins. I do, he said. If I don't fight for them, Charles will. A courtroom, she asked. It makes them feel like property. He paused. Then let's prove they're people who belong with us. Present man? Family court. The judge adjusted her glasses and glanced at the case file. This is an emergency motion filed by Mr. Charles Whitaker, contesting the guardianship of 5 minor children with alleged lineage to the Whitaker estate. Lila clenched her jaw. Charles's lawyer stood. We believe the children's paternity has been manipulated. Their presence threatens the family's corporate interests. We request immediate removal from Miss Monroe's care and temporary placement with the Whitaker Guardianship Trust. Gasps rippled. Even the court stenographer blinked. The judge turned to Lila. Mrs. Monroe, do you have legal counsel? I don't need one, she said quietly. I have truth. Charles snorted. Just then, the doors opened. Ethan walked in. Black suit, no tie. I'll represent the truth, he said. Witness Stanza stood on the pivot with his arms. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore in, then turned to face the judge. My name is Ethan Whitaker, he began. 6 years ago, due to an accident and a falsified medical report, I believed I was incapable of having children. I was wrong. He pointed to the boys. We are mine, not by accident, not by scandal, by love. Charles's lawyer objected. Your Honor, Mr. Whitaker is emotionally compromised. I would hope so, Ethan snapped. If not, I wouldn't be standing here at all. The judge silenced the room. You're requesting full custody, Mr. Whitaker? Ethan turned to Lila. His voice softened. Now I'm requesting something harder. Shared custody, with the woman who raised them when I disappeared. Lila blinked, stunned. And if that's not granted, the judge asked. Then give them all to her, he said. I won't let them live through a tug-of-war. They deserve one home, not 2 battlegrounds. Charles' final move. As court neared adjournment, Charles stood. I request a final DNA verification, he said, voice silk-coated venom. Privately supervised. My legal team will fund the lab. The judge looked unimpressed. You don't trust the 3 previous tests? She asked. I don't trust liars, Charles replied. His eyes locked on Lila. That's when Milo stood. No one had asked him to, but he did. My mom never lied, he said, his voice strong for 10 years old. And neither did we. But you, sir. He pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. You erased Dad's file. Gasp. Again. Charles froze. Don't worry, Milo added. We printed 3 copies. After cooling off behind the courthouse, and snow had started to fall, soft and slow. The press huddled behind barricades, shouting questions. Ethan held the boys close. Lila stood beside him. Why did you say it? She asked. That you'd give them up to me. Because I knew what it felt like to lose you once, he said. And I'll never gamble with them just to win some pride. She studied him. You keep surprising me. He smiled softly. I think I'm just remembering who I used to be. That night we dinner at the White House. Margaret sipped her tea by the fire as the children played chess on the rug. Ethan stood at the window, watching the snowfall. Lila joined him. The judge is issuing full joint custody, she said, and protective orders against Charles. Ethan exhaled. Thank God. And she nodded. Still, this doesn't fix everything. He turned to her. Then tell me where to start. She didn't say a word. Just reached for his hand. This time, she didn't let go. Chapter 9. The Uncle's Secret. Whitaker Global's annual shareholder meeting had never been anything more than formal handshakes, hollow applause, and projections on slick LED screens. Until today. Today, 5 children stood in the front row, each wearing little suits Lila had ironed that morning. Milo clutched a flash drive in his pocket like it held the universe. Because it did. Are you ready? Ethan whispered. Milo nodded, nerves hiding behind narrowed eyes. I was born ready. Lila stood near the doors with Margaret, watching the legacy of a broken lie walk into a room's address. Ethan approached the podium, crowd murmuring with expectation. For years, this company has been known for innovation, he began. But legacy isn't just built in stock options or patents. He looked at Milo. Does truth come quietly? Others crash through your front doors with backpacks and DNA reports. A few investors chuckled. Ethan turned serious. Today, we disclose not just numbers, but history, the kind that almost cost me everything. The lights dimmed, a screen lowered. Milo stepped up beside his father and inserted the flash drive. The video began. Hardened sweatpants, an internal fight, clip of Charles entering the private hospital room. Voice recording. No contact. We'll say it was a minor seizure. Get rid of the woman. Emails. Infertility diagnosis inserted. Confirm insurance records are scrubbed. Sponsors Charles delivering a bribe to Dr. Lowell, the fertility specialist. The final slide. Legacy cannot be stolen. It can only be erased if you let it. The screen went black. Silence swallowed the room. Then the whispers began, loud, furious. Board members flipping through notes, phones lighting up. And Charles? He stood slowly. Fabricated. This is fabricated, he spat. These files could have been doctored by anyone. A child? Ethan cut in. By my son. Charles paled. Milo tilted his chin up. And I triple encrypted the audit trail. The original files are already submitted to the DOJ and our internal ethics committee. Board replied. A senior board member stood. Effective immediately, we vote to suspend Charles Whitaker pending full investigation. Margaret added from the crowd, and effective tomorrow, he'll no longer be welcome on family property. Charles turned to her. Mother? 9, she said, calm but lethal. You buried a legacy to protect your ego. Now dig your own exit. Later on the rooftop. The air was sharp, honest, unfiltered. Ethan stood with Milo beside him, looking over the skyline. You did it, Ethan said. Milo grinned. You let me. You're my son, Ethan said softly. I'd follow you into a courtroom or a fire. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Milo asked, Are you going to marry Mom now? Ethan blinked. You don't think I'm a little late? Milo shrugged. You were late to everything else. Still showed up in the end. Within a week, Holani had fallen ill. Lila found Ethan in the garden, staring at a firefly blinking over the roses. I heard what happened, she said. The vote, the press is already running with it. I didn't do it for the press. I know. It turned to her. Charles was right about one thing, he murmured. I didn't remember who I was for a long time. And I didn't deserve you. Lila's voice cracked. You don't have to keep earning us. Just stay. I will, he promised, as long as you'll let me. Then Milo's voice echoed from the patio. Dad, she said, yeah. Ethan turned. To what? But Lila was already smiling, eyes soft, heart steady. Apparently, to forever. Chapter 10. The father they always deserved. The garden hadn't changed. It was still wild around the edges, still smelled like mint and clay, and still had Lila's name painted on the gate in fading blue letters. And now, Ethan was here, kneeling in the soil beside Jamie, his hands covered in dirt. I thought CEOs paid people for this, Jamie said, side-eyeing him. Ethan chuckled. I'm retired from being cold and important. Jamie smiled, proud. Good, you were bad at feelings. I'm still learning, Ethan replied, wiping his hands. But your mom said I'm a fast study. 3 months later, Savannah Courthouse. Margaret Whitaker sat in the front row, white gloves in her lap. The room was quiet as the judge stamped 5 official documents. Effective today, she announced, the legal names of Milo, Jonah, Theo, Jamie and Lynn are amended to Whitaker Monroe, joint custody upheld, full parental rights restored. Lila wiped her eyes. Ethan reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Margaret stood, whispered, You didn't just give them names, you gave them a father. Party was loud, chaotic, and smelled like barbecue and lemon cake. Neighbors dropped by with gifts, books, tools, and a baseball glove, passed down 3 generations. Ethan stood awkwardly in the corner, watching Lila move through the room like light through stained glass. You okay? Milo asked. I don't do parties. Milo nudged him toward the center. You do now. Across the room, Lynn was reciting chess openings to a man who looked terrified. Jamie was painting a mural of their family tree on the wall. Theo had rigged lights to blink in sync with the music. Jonah passed out lemonade. Ethan had never felt smaller, and never more seen. After the guests left, Lila and Ethan stood in the empty room, barefoot on the wooden floor. You didn't just show up, she said. You stayed. He looked down. I used to think family was something to be earned, but you just gave it. You had to choose it first. I did, he whispered. I choose it every day now. The mural on the wall showed 2 trees, one rooted, one reaching. At the center, 5 names, 2 hearts. Ethan touched the spot beneath it where his own name was painted. Do you think they'll forgive me for not being there at the start? Lila pressed her forehead to his. Garden at dusk. Milo sat beneath the fig tree, sketching in a notebook. Ethan joined him, quietly. Why are you drawing? He asked. Family, Milo said. Not how we look, just how it felt. He turned the page. Was messy, beautiful. Ethan stared at the lines and said, You made us whole. Milo smiled. No, you came back. That's what did it. A name they could carry. Savannah slept softly under the moon that night. In the little house with peeling shutters and a garden full of second chances, the world didn't feel broken anymore, just lived in. Lila closed the boys' bedroom door behind her. Ethan was waiting in the hallway, his shirt rumpled, a crayon streak on his collar. "We all asked for one thing before bed," he whispered. She tilted her head. "What?" He smiled. "That I don't leave." Lila leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, tired but glowing in that quiet way only mothers could. "You're not a ghost anymore, Ethan," she said. "You're their father." He nodded, voice low. "And I want to be yours too." She didn't speak. Not with words. She just took his hand. And in that moment, a man who once lied to the world about who he couldn't be, finally stepped into the truth of who he was. Some men hide behind boardrooms. Some women raise empires in kitchens, with nothing but grit and grace. Anson said, "Love doesn't come in perfect timing, but it still finds a way to be enough." This story isn't about a billionaire. It's about a boy who found his father, a woman who never gave up, and a family that chose love even when it arrived in pieces. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever lost someone, waited for an apology, or quietly held a family together without thanks, we hope you'll share your story in the comments. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is speak the truth that once hurt us and watch it become someone else's healing. We're listening, and love, as always, finds its way.